when my sister and I turned 55, we decided that we had to make a pact and decided to climb 60,000 vertical feet together by the time we turned 60 years old. And we call it 60 by 60. We decided to start by climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, the highest peak in Africa. And to go up to that peak, we found a fellow named Ryan Waters. And we decided that Ryan Waters could get us to the top of this 19,000-foot peak because he had just skied to the magnetic North Pole. And so a short year later, we found ourselves putting one foot in front of the other, climbing Kilimanjaro. Now, Kilimanjaro is a really long climb. And the first 5 days, all sorts of things happened to our group. Some people had stomach trouble, some people had bad knees, other people had altitude sickness. And by summit night, we were a raggedy crew. And Ryan sat us down that night, and he looked each one of us in the eye, and he said, you know, each one of you can make this. But the only way we're going to get there is if we get there together. So he said, here's the plan. Whoever is having the most trouble goes to the front of the line and sets the pace, and everybody's following. So we said, okay, good plan, and we set off. About 1 hour into the climb, we passed 15 Danish guys all in a row. These guys were tough, they were strong, and they were setting a steady pace up the mountain. Passed them, kept on going. And we did just like Ryan said. We took whoever was having the most trouble and we put him at the front of the line and we slowed down a little bit. I was having a great time. I had my rhythm, my breathing was working, and I felt the anxiety of whether or not I could get to the top slip away. And it wasn't until 6 hours into the climb that I really started paying attention to the rest of my team. And I noticed that Michelle was at the front of the line, and she was having a tough time. Every couple of bends in the path, she'd stop, and she thought she couldn't take another step. And Kelly, who was right behind her, would go over and she would wrap her arms around Michelle and she would say, you can do this. And Michelle would pick up her feet and would start walking again. And a couple more bends in the road, Michelle would stop again, and the whole scene would unfold over and over again until 2 hours later, they summited together, arm in arm. And all of us got there, thanks to Ryan, who was shepherding us from behind. He got us all to the top, even me and my sister. And it was spectacular. Now, you remember those 15 Danish guys? Those tough, strong 15 guys, only 5 of them made it to the top. They had used a very different model. They had put their strongest guys in front, who had set that good, strong, steady pace, and the weaker guys were behind. And slowly over the hours, they slipped back, and then they lost hope, and then they turned back. Because they didn't know that the secret wasn't their strength. It was getting there together. Now, I run a nonprofit, and I have an enormous amount of confidence in my leadership abilities. And on that day, on that mountain, I discovered that I had it all wrong. That I'd been leading from the front. Follow me. And in fact, I'd been leaving some of my team behind. And I made a vow that day as I came off the mountain to learn to lead like Ryan. My NGO is named Counterpart International, and Counterpart's entire mission is to help other nonprofit leaders reach their highest aspirations. And these are unbelievably audacious people from all over the world who have this vision for how their communities can be better. And let me just tell you, the kinds of risks these people take are way bigger than climbing mountains. Part of the joy of my job is getting to travel and not just meet the partners, but meet the communities that they're serving. So in Honduras, there's a little boy who's named Onassis. And Onassis lives in one of the most violent cities in Latin America, highest murder rate in Latin America. And there have never been options for children in that community, except joining gangs. Thanks to our partner, Onassis is one of the first group of children who has been able to avoid gang violence, first in his family. And in Morocco, our partner is working to help women escape domestic abuse. Imagine in a deeply traditional environment the strength it takes for a woman to break intergenerational cycles of fear and abuse and set a new course for her children. And in Guatemala, one of our partners is working with Daisy. Daisy is a 25-year-old widow in one of the most remote, poorest communities in Guatemala. And Daisy gathered together with other women in her village, and they started a coffee cooperative. And they now market their coffee around the world. And you may even see it. If you see, the label has Daisy's face as their brand. So our partners are audacious, and they've got vision, and they're striving to climb enormous mountains every day. And it's our honor and our privilege to help support them on their journey from the back. In the 1970s, my mother started a recycling program in our tiny little town. And this is before recycling was a thing. So she had this vision and a belief that she herself could actually create a greener planet. So she started this with a lot of energy, and she talked at the churches, and she talked here and there, and people began to show up on Saturdays with piles of recycling. And my mom was in there with her sleeves rolled up, and other volunteers joined her. She was leading from the back as well. And what I learned from her, I learned from standing next to her in that parking lot, sorting the glass by color and putting twine around bundles of newspaper. And as I look back, I believe it's my mother who inspired me in the work I do for Counterpart today. In 2 weeks' time, my sister and I are climbing another mountain. This time we're going to Mount Elbrus in Russia, and we're going with Ryan again. And this time, I'm not worried about getting to the summit at all. I'm not even thinking about it. I am thinking about the team that I get to climb with. All of you are climbing mountains. In the next few weeks, what mountain are you going to be climbing? And who are you going to help to the top? Thank you.